For today's DC Multiverse review, we are looking at the Mcfarlane Collector Edition Mirror Master. Before I talk about the accessories and the figure, let's take a quick look at the data profile card. As you can see, there is this beautiful comic book artwork of Mirror Master, and on the backside of the card, you do have a read-up for who the character is. His real name is Sam Scudder. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. And it reads, Criminal Sam Scudder uses the codename Mirror Master, wielding devices allowing him power over reflective surfaces. He was an early member of Central City's Rogues, villains employing deemed high-tech weapons in their crimes. Mirror Master can emerge from any reflective surface and drag victims back to the mirror world. And that's a pretty good read-up on who Mirror Master is as a character. And let's move on to the accessories that are included with this figure. So let's start with the interchangeable hands, because he comes with quite a few of them, and it's actually interesting because unlike some of the more recent collector edition releases that have been lacking with accessories, this guy at least has the bare minimum in my opinion. So on the figure, you can see he has two item holding hands in the glove versions. He does come with a set of fist hands that are also gloved. So you have this option if you want to have him tussle with the superhero that he fights, which is the Flash, in the good old-fashioned way. And for the other sets of hands that he has the gloveless versions of the same sets of hands. So here are the two fist hands without the gloves, and then here are the item holding hands also without the gloves. So you get all these options, which is surprising because you would think that for a figure like this, they would probably just include the two fist hands and then the mirror guns and then call it a day, right? But somehow he also came with a few more interchangeable hands. So that is actually good. I am very surprised about that. Now, of course, Mirror Master is not complete without his mirror guns. So he does have two of these. And let's take a look at one of them. So the overall sculpt for the mirror gun itself is not too bad. I actually like the way it looks on this sculpt here. It does have some details, but it does lack some paint details as well. So for example, the front part here, from certain images I have seen of what this gun looks like when it's about to be used, it does illuminate a bright blue color. So if you are somebody that can customize your accessories and just make things look better, you probably would paint this blue. They look really weird without the blue, and it just seems very plain just leaving them all gray like this. But yeah, that's the only, downside to the front part of the mirror gun. But outside of that, the rest of the sculpt here is not too bad, and he does hold these in his hands pretty good. They won't fall off of his hands or anything, so if you're going to pose this guy on the shelf, that is not a problem. And that is pretty much all the accessories that he comes with. The last thing he comes with is, of course, the DC figure stand, which we already seen before many times. So that is pretty much it for the contents in this box. And now, let's move on to the aesthetics of this figure. Taking a closer look at Mirror Master here, the overall aesthetics of his costume is very simplistic. It's mainly just green and orange, and on top of that, the overall mold itself is 100% reuse of one that we have seen before. It was introduced with the Speeding Bullets Batman figure and eventually reused with Black Lightning and Batman Superman Fusion. Now this time around, the reuse here actually works. I think the mold itself works for a character like Mirror Master, and since the suit is mainly just flat orange, I don't mind these patterns being visible, because in this case it actually allows the suit to have some sculpted details. But for Black Lightning and Batman Superman Fusion, I wish they got rid of these line patterns because it didn't really work for those two characters, in my opinion, with their suit designs. But for Mirror Master here, it actually helps the figure stand out a little bit when it comes to the orange parts of the suits. So when it comes to new sculpted areas, not a whole lot. It's mainly just the head sculpt, and then this part right here, and of course the waist area with the pouches. And let's start with the head sculpt. Overall, I think this is a very nice head sculpt for Mirror Master. He does have this sort of smirk expression, but I wish he did come with faceplate options. Ever since they introduced faceplate options, it has been kind of a problem with the collector edition line where not a lot of figures get the faceplate options. Only a handful of them do, and it's really strange. I thought that was going to be the staple with collector edition figures going forward, was that most of them would have some faceplates included, but that wasn't the case. And Mirror Master here could have benefited with some alternate expressions, like a serious expression, a calm expression, you name it. But he doesn't have any of those. So he is permanently having a smirk expression all the time, which is quite unfortunate. But the overall head portrait here is pretty spot on to what Mirror Master looks like when he's wearing his mask and everything, so I think they did a pretty good job there. And for this part right here, which is, I guess, part of his costume or his mask, whatever this is supposed to be, I call it a collar piece, it is not glued down. It is actually a separate floaty piece, which you could remove if you pop the head sculpt off, but I don't know why you would remove this because this is supposed to be part of his costume. So in this case, if you don't like the fact that it's floating like this, you could just glue it down with super glue, which I might do, maybe. I haven't decided, but yeah, it's really strange that it's not glued down. And then for the waist area, he does have this sort of belt of some kind that he's wearing, which are connected to these pouches right here. And these pouches do not hinder the leg articulation. They are this soft PVC material, so you do want to be careful because there could be a chance, if you're not careful, you might accidentally rip this off. Just keep that in mind. And the pouches do have some sculpt details to them, and they are accurate in terms of their colors being green, but I wish like areas like this had a different, paint color to them, because they just look so plain just being all flat green like this. And yeah, that is pretty much the pouches. And if you're wondering, what are the pouches for? I'm assuming they're meant to store the batteries or whatever he uses to recharge his mirror guns. That's probably what these pouches are holding inside them. So that is the waist area right here. And then for the legs, just your standard legs, the same ones we have seen before on the previous figures that I've used as mold. So that is pretty much most of the aesthetics for this figure. Not a whole lot of new sculpt outside of the areas that I pointed out. And on the back side, it's pretty much just the same. It's all flat orange and green. Yeah, but it will work. At least we have a Mirror Master. Better than not having a Mirror Master figure. So if you don't have one, I recommend picking this guy up if you can still get him, because I don't know if he's still available. I waited for this guy to go on clearance. If you do follow the channel, I did make a short where after waiting like, I don't even know how long, he got marked down to $10. And I was like, this is crazy. Because this copy of Mirror Master that I have has been the same one that has been sitting at my local Target store for a long time. No one bought it. It just stayed there. And then finally they decided to mark it down to like $10 just to get rid of it. And I'm glad I waited. So that's how I have this figure. But if you do need this for your collection, I think there are still ways to get this figure. I don't know if you can get them for like less than retail. That just depends on if you're lucky. So hopefully if you do need a Mirror Master, he will still be accessible. All right, that is everything for aesthetics. Let's move on to the articulation. Starting off with the articulation of the head sculpt, can Mirror Master look up? He can look up this much, which is pretty decent. Can he look down? Okay, he can look down. He can turn his head left and right. He can tilt his head side to side. No problems. So overall, the range of motion for the head sculpt is pretty decent. Moving down to the arms. He can swing them back and forth. He can stretch them out this much. He has upper bicep swivels. He has double jointed. And he has swivel in the hands and wrist articulation. So standard articulation for the arms. And since he does have a upper torso cut, can he lean forward? Oh, he can actually lean forward a little bit better than some figures. That is surprising. Once again, every time I review these figures, sometimes they do some very impressive things that catch me off guard. And I'm like, why can't they just incorporate the same thing they did on that figure to every other figure? But for some reason, they don't. So he can lean forward a little bit, which is kind of cool. What about leaning back? Whoa, he can lean back as well. So this guy has actual good range of motion for leaning forward and back. Surprisingly. What about rotation? And rotation. Whoa, this is like the best articulated upper torso I've seen for a Mcfarlane figure. That is not a good thing too. That's actually pretty bad, because most of them don't have this sort of range of motion when it comes to even leaning forward. All right, the waist. Can that lean forward? Yes, a little bit. Can it lean back? It can also lean back. Can it rotate? I can rotate a little. Actually, it can rotate a lot more, but it does run into the the waist piece right here, so do keep that in mind. And then now for the legs, can you do the splits? Not exactly, but he can still spread his legs out at least, and these things don't get in the way, which is great. What about kicking forward? Not the best kick. Does he have double jointed? Yes, he does. It does work. It's quite tight. Articulation of the feet, swivel, and toe articulation. Oh, it is stuck. There we go. All right, that is basically all the articulation for Mirror Master here, and I am still very surprised by this everything. I'm speechless how much range of motion this upper torso actually has. That is crazy. Oh, speaking of articulation, we almost forgot, because I always forget. Does he have die swivels? Oh, this leg has die swivels. What about this one? Okay, this one doesn't work. This one does. So clearly this one, if I use like a hairdryer, I could probably loosen the stiffness. So he does have upper die swivels as well. All right, that is all the articulation. You could probably get him into some decent action poses. I don't think you can get him into like crazy poses, right? He's not that dynamic, but he will get the job done if you are trying to pose him. And now, before we get into the comparisons, let me show what this guy looks like with his mirror guns, because that is basically what he's missing here. So, putting these guns onto his hands, it's not hard to do, but his hands are quite stiff, so do be careful. So there's one of them. Here is the other one, which I'm just going to do off camera because this side is always tricky for me for some reason. Oh, there we go. All right, that wasn't too bad. And here we go. We got him with his freaking mirror guns. Look at that. That is sick. So if you want to have him basically, pointing these at the Flash, you can do this, or just make like a cool pose with him standing. Let me just try to do that. I'm not good at posing when I'm recording these reviews, but let me just try a certain pose. There you go. Something like this could work, kinda. There you go. That is one way to pose him with these guns. All right. Now let's do some comparisons. Let me just fix them up and actually have him hold the gun this way, have him angled this way, because we need him on this side. All right. Oh no, he's going to fall over. I'm keeping all this in because this is technically B-roll. This is what happens behind the scenes sometimes. All right, comparison time. For the first comparison, here is Mirror Master next to the Flash. This is, of course, the Flash figure from the Flashpoint build wave, and I can't help but notice he's taller than the Flash. Maybe it's the way that I have him standing, I'm not sure, but it looks like he's taller than the Flash because of the body mold he's reusing, which I don't know if this is accurate in terms of their height. Is he supposed to be taller than the Flash? I don't think so. I think they're like roughly the same height, right? Usually. But hey, I mean, it still works, right? You got Mirror Master, you got the Flash. Now, if you don't want to use this version of the Flash and you have the Rebirth version, which was one of the early Flash figures that came out, I think that one could also work with this Mirror Master. But I brought this guy in just because I always want to see what they look like. I haven't taken this figure out in like a long time. He's just been in storage because I've been reorganizing, and this is the first time I've actually taken the figure out again and seen the two of them next to each other. Not a bad pair up, but the height difference is kind of strange. I don't remember Flash being shorter than Mirror Master, but I could be wrong. So there is this first comparison here with the Flash. And let's bring in some more recent figures I picked up. Here is Mirror Master next to the Hush 2 Batman. And as you can see, Batman is, of course, a tad bit taller than Mirror Master. And, of course, for the last comparison, here is a villain next to another villain, which is Professor Pig. I don't know if these characters have ever interacted. I don't think so. Or maybe they have. But you can do that as well. You can have them work together. Mirror Master working with Professor Pig. That is a possibility, maybe. And for the sake of it, I'm just going to throw in one more comparison for fun. Here is Mirror Master next to Failsafe. There you go. Next to a Megafig or a Build-A-Figure, whatever you want to call this. It's not a Megafig. It doesn't feel like a Megafig. All right, that is basically all the comparisons for today's review. If you found today's review of Mirror Master informative, do give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.